The morning sun painted golden streaks across the palace walls as Kate Middleton stood at her bedroom window, watching the grounds she had called home for over a decade. Her fingers trembled as she traced the glass, knowing this would be one of the last times she would see this view as the Duchess of Cambridge. The weight of her decision pressed heavily on her chest, making each breath feel labored. William had already left for his morning meetings, unaware that today would mark the beginning of their final goodbye. Kate had spent months agonizing over this moment, consulting with lawyers in secret, speaking to counselors, and crying into her pillow long into the night. The fairy tale that had captured the world's attention was slowly crumbling behind closed doors. The problems had started subtly, like hairline cracks in a beautiful vase. William's increasing involvement with royal duties meant less time at home, less attention to their growing children, and less patience for Kate's own struggles with public life. She had tried to be the perfect duchess, the perfect wife, the perfect mother. But perfection was exhausting, and she was running out of strength to maintain the facade. Their last real conversation had been 3 weeks ago, during a family dinner that was interrupted by 5 different phone calls about state matters. Kate had watched their children's faces fall each time William stepped away from the table, promising to return in just a moment. Those moments stretched into hours, and dinner grew cold while they waited for their father to remember they existed. Kate had married for love, but somewhere along the way, love had been buried under duty, protocol, and endless public scrutiny. She found herself wondering if William even saw her anymore, or just the role she played. When he looked at her during official events, she felt like a beautiful accessory rather than his partner and best friend. The children had begun asking why Daddy was always working, why Mommy looked sad, and why they couldn't have normal family time like their friends at school. Those innocent questions broke Kate's heart more than any tabloid headline ever could. She realized she was failing not just as a wife, but as a mother, by allowing her children to grow up in a home where love felt conditional on public appearances. Last night, after putting the children to bed, Kate had finally found the courage to make the call to her private attorney. Her voice had shaken as she uttered the words she never thought she would say. "I want to discuss the possibility of separation." The lawyer had been kind but direct about the complexities involved when royalty was concerned. There would be no simple divorce, no quiet departure from public life. As she prepared for what she knew would be their final family breakfast together, Kate felt a strange mixture of grief and relief. She was about to break William's heart, and her own, but she was also about to reclaim her life and give her children a chance at happiness away from the suffocating expectations of royal life. The sound of car wheels on gravel announced William's return from his morning appointment. Kate took a deep breath, smoothed her dress, and walked downstairs to face the man she had once believed would be her forever. Today, she would tell him that forever had an expiration date, and they had reached it. She found him in his study, already buried in paperwork despite having just returned home. This image would stay with her always. William, so focused on his duties that he didn't even notice her standing in the doorway, didn't see the tears threatening to spill from her eyes, didn't sense that their world was about to change forever. "William," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. He looked up, and, for a brief moment, she saw the man she had fallen in love with at university. But the moment passed quickly, replaced by the concerned expression of a duke wondering what crisis his wife might be bringing to his attention now. "We need to talk," Kate continued, stepping into the room and closing the door behind her. Those 4 words would echo in both their minds for years to come, marking the beginning of the end of one of the world's most watched love stories. William set down his pen and looked at his wife with the same expression he wore during diplomatic meetings, polite attention masking inner calculations. Kate's heart sank as she realized that even this, their most important conversation, would be handled with royal protocol rather than genuine emotion. "What is it, Kate?" "I have the Commonwealth meeting in an hour," William said, glancing at his watch. The gesture, small as it was, felt like a slap. Here she was, about to tear their lives apart, and he was worried about being late to a meeting. Kate walked to the chair across from his desk, the same chair where she had sat years ago when he had proposed, when they had planned their wedding, when they had discussed their children's futures. Now it felt like she was sitting in the defendant's chair at her own trial. "William, I can't do this anymore," she began, her carefully rehearsed speech dissolving into raw honesty. "I can't pretend that we're happy. I can't keep smiling for the cameras while our marriage falls apart behind closed doors. I can't watch our children grow up thinking that love means putting duty before family." William's face changed from polite interest to genuine alarm. He leaned forward in his chair, finally, giving her his complete attention. What are you talking about, Kate? We're fine. We've always managed to work through our difficulties. The word managed hit Kate like a physical blow. Their marriage had become something to be managed, like a public relations crisis or a difficult diplomatic situation. When had they stopped being lovers and partners and become merely co-managers of their royal brand? When was the last time we had dinner together without your phone ringing? Kate asked, her voice growing stronger. When was the last time you asked me how I was feeling, not about royal duties or appearances, but really feeling? When was the last time you tucked our children into bed instead of reading briefs until midnight? William stood up abruptly, pacing to the window. Kate could see his reflection in the glass, and the pain in his eyes almost made her reconsider everything. But she had to be strong, for both of them. You knew what this life would be like when you married me, William said quietly. The crown comes with responsibilities. I can't just abandon my duties because they're inconvenient. I'm not asking you to abandon anything, Kate replied, standing as well. I'm telling you that I have to abandon this. I have to choose my children's well-being over royal expectations. I have to choose my own sanity over public perception. The word separation hung unspoken between them, but both knew it was coming. William turned from the window, and Kate saw that his hands were shaking slightly. Despite everything, he was still the man she had loved, and seeing him hurt was agony. The children need stability, William said, his voice taking on the tone he used during press conferences. Divorce in the royal family creates scandal, affects the monarchy's reputation. We have obligations that go beyond our personal feelings. Kate felt anger flare in her chest. Even now, faced with the collapse of their marriage, William's first thought was about the monarchy, about duty, about everything except the fact that his wife was drowning in unhappiness. Our children need parents who love each other, or at least parents who are honest about their feelings, Kate shot back. They need to see what healthy relationships look like, not watch us pretend to be happy for the sake of tradition. William sat down heavily in his chair, looking suddenly older than his years. Kate could see him trying to process what she was telling him, trying to find a solution that would satisfy both duty and desire. But some problems couldn't be solved with diplomatic negotiations. What do you want me to do? William asked finally, his voice small and lost. For the first time in months, Kate heard her husband instead of the Duke. But it was too late for the conversation they should have had years ago. I want you to let me go, Kate whispered, tears finally spilling down her cheeks. I want you to love me enough to let me find happiness, even if it's not with you. I want us to end this marriage while we can still respect each other, while we can still co-parent our children with love instead of resentment. The silence that followed was deafening. Outside, Kate could hear the distant sounds of palace life continuing normally, unaware that inside this room, a love story that had captured the world's imagination was quietly dying. William buried his face in his hands, and Kate knew that despite all their problems, despite all the hurt and neglect, he truly hadn't seen this coming. In his mind, they were still managing successfully. But management wasn't marriage, and Kate was finally brave enough to demand more. The days following Kate's declaration passed in a surreal haze of whispered conversations with lawyers, secret meetings with palace staff, and careful planning to protect their children from the storm that was about to break. William moved through his duties like a man in shock, fulfilling his obligations with mechanical precision while his personal world crumbled. Kate found herself remembering their early days together, when William would skip classes to spend time with her, when he would cook simple meals in their university kitchen, when he would hold her close and promise that they would face whatever challenges came their way together. Those memories felt like they belonged to different people, younger versions of themselves who hadn't yet been crushed under the weight of expectation and protocol. The hardest part was maintaining normal routines for their children. Kate helped with homework, attended school events, and read bedtime stories while knowing that soon everything would change. The children sensed something was wrong, but couldn't name it. They became more clingy, more anxious, asking repeatedly if Mummy and Daddy were okay. William's mother had been the first family member to notice the tension. During a family dinner at Windsor, she had pulled Kate aside and asked directly if everything was well. Kate had nearly broken down then, wanting desperately to confide in someone who understood the pressures of royal life. But she held her tongue, knowing that once the family knew, there would be no going back. The Queen's intuition proved correct when, 3 days later, William requested a private audience. Kate wasn't present for that conversation, But she could imagine the scene. William, normally so composed, struggling to explain that his marriage was ending, that the fairy tale the public believed in was actually a nightmare of miscommunication and misplaced priorities. Palace advisors began appearing at all hours, grim-faced men and women who spoke in hushed tones about damage control and public relations strategies. Kate realized that even her divorce would be managed like a state affair, with carefully worded statements and strategic timing to minimize impact on the monarchy. The children's school was quietly informed that there might be increased media attention in the coming weeks. Security was reviewed and enhanced. Every aspect of their separation was being choreographed like a royal event, which Kate found both impressive and heartbreaking. One evening, as Kate tucked their youngest into bed, the little one asked, "Mummy, why doesn't Daddy read to me anymore?" The innocent question broke Kate's heart all over again. William had been so consumed with crisis management that he had stopped being present for the simple moments that mattered most to their children. Kate began the painful process of house hunting, looking for a place where she and the children could start fresh while still maintaining the security requirements that would follow them forever. Every property she visited felt either too grand or too modest, nothing quite right for a family caught between royal obligations and the desire for normal life. The media had started to notice subtle changes. Kate's appearances became less frequent, and when she did attend events, royal watchers noted that she and William rarely interacted naturally. Speculation began to build, but the palace's official stance remained that all was well with the young royal family. Kate found herself grieving not just for her marriage, but for the life she had imagined when she was young and in love. She had dreamed of growing old with William, of watching their children marry and have children of their own, of being partners in both duty and joy. Instead, she was planning custody arrangements and preparing for a life where every decision would be scrutinized by the media. William's attempts at reconciliation came in the form of grand gestures that showed how little he understood what Kate actually needed. He arranged for romantic dinners at exclusive restaurants, surprise weekends at luxury resorts, expensive jewelry that felt more like compensation than expressions of love. What Kate wanted was simple: his time, his attention, his presence in the everyday moments that made up their family life. The breaking point came during their son's school play. Kate sat in the audience, saving a seat for William, who had promised to attend. As their child performed on stage, looking out hopefully for his father in the crowd, Kate's phone buzzed with a message. "Emergency meeting called. Can't make it. Sorry." That night, after the children were asleep, Kate packed a bag. She couldn't stay in the same house any longer, pretending that tomorrow might be different, that William might suddenly prioritize family over duty. She moved into one of the smaller palace residences, telling the children it was temporary while Daddy worked on important projects. The physical separation made their emotional distance official. Kate felt relief mixed with profound sadness as she settled into her new, simpler space. For the first time in years, she could breathe without feeling the crushing weight of trying to be perfect for everyone except herself. The news broke on a rainy Thursday morning in October. Despite all their careful planning and attempts at discretion, a palace insider had leaked the story to the press. Kate woke to her phone buzzing incessantly with calls from friends, family, and reporters, all seeking confirmation of what the headlines were screaming: royal marriage in crisis, William and Kate living apart. The palace's initial response was swift and predictable, a brief statement saying that the Duke and Duchess valued their privacy during this difficult time and requested that the media respect their family's need for space. But the media machine had already started turning, and privacy was a luxury they could no longer afford. Kate found herself trapped in her temporary residence, unable to leave without facing a wall of photographers and reporters shouting questions. The children couldn't go to school without being followed. Simple activities like grocery shopping or taking a walk became impossible. The life she had hoped to reclaim for herself and her children had become even more restricted than before. William's response to the media storm was to throw himself deeper into his royal duties. He increased his public appearances, took on additional charitable commitments, and spoke passionately about causes close to his heart. To the outside world, he appeared to be coping admirably with his personal crisis. But Kate could see the signs of strain in his carefully composed public appearances. The most heartbreaking aspect of their separation was watching their children struggle to understand why their family was suddenly the focus of such intense public attention. Their oldest child, mature beyond their years, began asking sophisticated questions about divorce and custody that no child should have to consider. The younger ones became withdrawn and anxious, clinging to Kate during the day and having nightmares at night. Friends and family members found themselves choosing sides, despite Kate and William's attempts to keep their personal relationships separate from their marital problems. Some blamed Kate for not trying harder to make the marriage work, arguing that royal marriages required sacrifice and compromise. Others criticized William for prioritizing duty over family, suggesting that he had driven Kate away through neglect and insensitivity. The legal proceedings moved forward with glacial pace, complicated by questions that had never been fully tested in royal divorces. Issues of custody, financial support, royal titles, and future roles had to be negotiated not just between two people, but between lawyers, palace officials, and ultimately the queen herself. Every decision required careful consideration of constitutional implications and public perception. Kate began attending therapy, something she had resisted during her marriage out of fear that it would become public knowledge. Now, with nothing left to hide, she found healing in finally being able to speak honestly about her struggles with royal life, her feelings of isolation, and her fears about her children's futures. The therapist helped her understand that her decision to leave wasn't selfish. It was necessary for her mental health and her ability to be a good mother. Meanwhile, William underwent his own journey of self-discovery. Away from Kate's daily presence, he began to recognize how much he had taken her support for granted. He started seeing a counselor as well, not to save his marriage, but to understand how he could be a better father and co-parent. For the first time, he began to question whether the way he had been raised to prioritize duty above all else was actually the best approach to life. The public's reaction was mixed and passionate. Some supporters rallied around Kate, seeing her as a woman who had been pushed to her limits by an inflexible system. Others defended William, arguing that he was simply fulfilling his responsibilities as a future king. Social media became a battleground where strangers fought viciously over the private lives of two people they had never met. International media attention was intense, with reporters from around the world descending on London to cover every development in the royal separation. The story dominated headlines, pushing aside other important news and creating a circus atmosphere that made normal life impossible for everyone involved. As autumn turned to winter, Kate and William began to find a new rhythm as separated parents. They developed careful protocols for sharing time with their children, attending school events together when necessary, and presenting a united front despite their personal differences. The children slowly adapted to their new reality, learning to navigate between two homes while still feeling loved and supported by both parents. The most difficult moment came when they had to explain to their children that Mommy and Daddy wouldn't be living together anymore, that sometimes even people who love each other can't make each other happy. The conversation left all of them in tears, but it also marked the beginning of a more honest relationship between parents and children. Kate found unexpected strength in her new independence. Without the constant pressure to be the perfect duchess, she began to rediscover parts of herself that had been buried under royal expectations. She started painting again, something she hadn't done since university. She began considering what kind of work she might want to do once the divorce was final and her role in the royal family was clarified. Spring arrived early that year, bringing with it the final resolution of William and Kate's divorce. After months of negotiations, legal proceedings, and media speculation, they had reached an agreement that prioritized their children's welfare above all else. The official announcement was scheduled for a quiet Tuesday morning, timed to minimize market disruption and allow the palace to control the narrative as much as possible. Kate stood in her new home, a beautiful estate in the countryside, far enough from London to provide privacy, but close enough for the children to maintain their relationships and school attendance. She had decorated it with warm colors and comfortable furniture, creating the kind of welcoming family environment she had always dreamed of having. For the first time in years, she felt truly at peace. The divorce settlement was generous, but came with conditions. Kate would retain her title and receive substantial financial support, but her future public role would be limited. She accepted these restrictions willingly, understanding that they were the price of her freedom. The children would spend equal time with both parents, an arrangement that required careful coordination but seemed to be working well for everyone involved. William had surprised everyone by requesting that the final divorce hearing be private, away from media attention. When they met in the judge's chambers for the last time as husband and wife, there was an unexpected tenderness between them. They had spent months working through their anger and resentment, finally reaching a place where they could remember why they had once loved each other so deeply. "I'm sorry," William said quietly as they signed the final papers. "I'm sorry that I couldn't be the husband you needed, that I couldn't find a way to balance everything better." Kate looked at him with tears in her eyes, but no bitterness in her heart. "I'm sorry too," she replied. "I'm sorry that we couldn't make it work, that our love story had to end this way. But I'm not sorry that we tried, and I'm not sorry for our children." Their final public appearance together was at their daughter's school graduation ceremony. They sat side by side, applauding their child's achievements, and for a moment looked like any proud divorced parents working together for their family. The media captured the moment, but the frenzy had died down considerably as the public moved on to other stories. The children adapted to their new reality with the remarkable resilience that young people often display. They learned to pack weekend bags, to have 2 sets of everything, to navigate the complex logistics of having parents who lived in different places but remained committed to their well-being. Most importantly, they saw their parents genuinely happy for the first time in years, which gave them permission to be happy too. Kate's new life unfolded gradually and peacefully. She volunteered at local charities without the massive security detail and media attention that had always accompanied her royal duties. She took art classes at the community center, attended parent meetings at her children's schools, and slowly built friendships with people who knew her simply as Kate, not as a duchess or former royal. William, meanwhile, embraced his role as a single father with unexpected enthusiasm. Without Kate to rely on for domestic responsibilities, he learned to cook simple meals, help with homework, and be fully present during his time with the children. His relationship with them deepened in ways he hadn't expected, and he began to understand what Kate had been trying to tell him about the importance of everyday moments. The media eventually found new stories to obsess over, and the intense scrutiny of their personal lives faded to a more manageable level of public interest. Kate was occasionally photographed at school events or local shops, but the pictures were usually respectful and unobtrusive. She had achieved something rare for someone who had been so famous, the right to live quietly. 1 year after their divorce was finalized, Kate received an unexpected phone call from William. Their daughter had been asking questions about why Mummy and Daddy had gotten divorced, and William wasn't sure how to answer her. They talked for nearly an hour, sharing insights about parenting and supporting each other through the ongoing challenges of raising children in the public eye. The conversation ended with William saying something that brought tears to Kate's eyes. "You were right to leave. I can see now how unhappy you were, and how unhappy we all were. The children are better now, and so are we. Thank you for being brave enough to do what I couldn't do." Kate's response was simple but heartfelt. "We both did the best we could with what we knew at the time. What matters now is that we're both better parents because of what we've learned." As she hung up the phone, Kate looked out at her garden where her children were playing with the neighbor's dog, their laughter filling the air. The sun was setting behind the trees, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks. It wasn't the fairy tale ending she had once imagined, but it was something perhaps more valuable, a real life filled with genuine love, honest relationships, and the freedom to be authentically herself. The story of William and Kate's marriage had captivated the world, but the story of their divorce had taught them both something more important. Sometimes the greatest act of love is knowing when to let go, and sometimes the most courageous thing you can do is choose your own happiness over everyone else's expectations. Their final parting had indeed been tearful, but those tears were not just of sadness. They were also of relief, of gratitude, and of hope for whatever came next.